The toy bar is open! Come wander on in, grab a stool, and hang out with a drink while your hosts and toy barflies, Jason Devall and Dave Draper, discuss, argue, and celebrate their love of toys, games, and all things collectible. Brought to you by... we'll get back to you on that. This is Dave and Devall's Toys and Collectibles.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an all-new Dave and Devall's Toys and Collectibles right here on ToyWorldOrder.com, and this time on YouTube.com/ToyWorldOrder. We're your hosts. I'm Devall. That's the Dave Draper.
Yay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're bringing to you not only in audio form, but also in video form. As you can see, our lovely, wonderful faces, me with not shaved in 4 days and without my trademark hat.
Oh no, what happened to your trademark hat?
I mowed in it and got sweaty, and I haven't done laundry yet.
You can get the Legionnaires from your
hat. Legionnaire's disease. That'll be fun during the COVID. Nice. But gang, this is episode 400 of Dave and Devall's Toys and Collectibles, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Like, we kind of started this show as a way for Dave and I to just kind of hang out and talk about toys every week. And to kind of, at the time, like, I needed something. I'm like, I got to do something every week or I'm going to go nuts. And I can't.
Well, and you had a lot of things. At the time, you had a lot of things you wanted to vent about and talk about.
Yes. Yes, I did. And, of course, the show has morphed from that into utter nonsense most of the time.
Basically.
Yeah,
just
basically.
two guys yapping.
Pretty much, which we have our fans and we have our detractors.
Yeah.
Lots of them. Don't care. Water. But, my God, how many years are we into this now?
I don't know. 9? Yeah, probably 8 or 9.
We're doing this a long time.
Been a while.
But this episode's a little different. This episode's a little well, it's a lot different. There's we're not going to talk about toys. We're not going to talk about movies. We're not going to do any of that crazy discussion that we normally do. Mostly because it's Dave and I's show.
Well, and the original concept was actually supposed to be during the height of the COVID pandemic.
Yes.
And we had different plans for the 400.
Yes.
But those plans have kind of fallen through.
Yeah.
And so we're going to kind of like shift.
Then Dave brought me this idea.
Well, the idea was for during the thing, because it's the upshot is it's supposed to be a funny episode. It's supposed to make you laugh.
Yes.
And that's the idea, is that we all probably need a laugh.
Yeah, we still
do. Yeah, like to be fair,
dear Lord,
I don't know that things have changed that radically that we don't need a laugh.
No. And of course, you see the laptop here. It is recording the show as well.
Yeah, it's recording the actual literal podcast.
The literal podcast. So Dave brought this idea to me.
Well, because I stole it from other people that have done it, to be fair.
Which is what we do best.
It is what we do best. We are not Greeks, we are Romans. We're not really Romans because they actually improved on things, but we have the steel part down pat.
Boy, we've never improved the wheel. We've just been like, how can we make this worse?
Yeah, well, not necessarily worse, but let's just, like, that car's not going anywhere. Let's get some wheels.
Let's get some wheels.
Free wheels.
Yay, free wheels.
So, point being, the Eye of Argon. I'll read from the back. Ironically, the back's written by professionals. This is not a hoax. Jim Thies was a real person who wrote the Eye of Argon in all seriousness as a teenager and published it in a fanzine, Osfan, in 1970. But the story did not pass into the oblivion that awaits most amateur fiction. Instead, a miracle happened, and transcribed and photocopied texts began to circulate in science fiction circles, gaining a wide and incredulous audience among both professionals and fans. It became the ultimate samizdat, an underground classic, and for more than 30 years, it has been the subject of midnight readings at conventions, as thousands have come to appreciate the negative genius of this amazing Ed Wood of prose. And the idea is that you read the book aloud, and if you laugh, now there are different variations on this, but if you laugh, something negative is supposed to happen, and you switch off to the next guy. And then they read, and if they laugh, then they, again, something negative is supposed to happen, and you switch off, and then you switch off with the chapters too. I guess traditionally it's been drinking, but we're both not really heavy drinkers.
We were going to do drinking.
We were going to do it.
I decided against it because I haven't been drunk in 14 years.
Yeah, and I
15
couldn't like. I mean, I don't drink at all.
Right.
I would have done it for this, but I mean, I can't like. I wasn't gonna make him do something that he wasn't comfortable with, just for a joke.
No offense, I love all you guys, but I'm not gonna get cronked out of my head just for this.
But yeah, like the one that I saw it from, they were playing Dark Souls, and like they had to switch off who had to actually play when they laughed.
Let's play the hardest game.
Well, that was part of the.
I beat that game.
Did you beat all three?
No, I just beat the first.
I think they were playing 2.
I just beat the first one. That's
which
as
I
far
think
as I got.
is well. So anyway, now one thing I do want to say about this book before we start is I want it kind of understood. You know, Jim Thies was 14 when he wrote this,
yes.
I believe.
Yes.
And I've heard he's passed on since then.
Yes.
This was like the 70s. He was a little hurt when eventually the story of the book, you know, the reputation of the book was made aware to him. You know, he was not the guy from The Room who kind of embraced the negative publicity.
Aspect, right.
And I do feel a little bad about that, but I also think there's something to be said, as we said at the beginning, about laughter. And I think even though it hasn't had the reception that he would have wanted and didn't appreciate, it has brought a lot of people a lot of joy.
Yes.
Nevertheless, and I think more so than a competent Conan ripoff ever would have. A competent Conan ripoff would have been forgotten.
Yeah.
And this has been bringing people joy for years. So I hope that people watching this video and listening to the podcast take what we're doing in that spirit, that we're all just trying to be happy and to laugh and to both appreciate and laugh and have a little fun with it. I know I would not want what I wrote at 14 to be broadcast all over the world at conventions all over the place. I'm a little hesitant about letting people read what I'm working on now. So, and when we talked about this before recording, Jason said the same thing. But now he's being quiet because apparently he's
oh no, I was reading. There's a little
Mozart.
No,
he was a genius.
There's an opening about Jim Thies himself, and I was just kind of reading to see when he passed.
I think it's somewhat recently.
Is it?
I saw a video on the YouTubes.
So yeah,
that was kind of like, hey, it's kind of mean to do this, and I was like, oh great, because that's our whole plan for the 400th episode.
Yeah.
So
good.
So again, like we're making fun, but we're also, I mean, there is love. I mean,
oh God, yes.
I mean,
and trust me, we will lovingly make fun of this book.
Yeah.
But it's. I mean,
and again,
how many of us can actually say that we are a published author?
Yeah.
Honestly.
And again, he's been read by the greats. He's you know, people know who he is, and at the end of the day, he followed his dream. It didn't quite turn out the way he wanted, but he has a legacy.
Yeah.
And I think it's a legacy that made people happy, even if it wasn't quite the way he intended.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna.
Oh, we're just.
Now, you've already read the first.
No. I read like the first paragraph.
All right,
and I wanted to know what I was getting into.
Well,
and it's terrible.
Yeah.
But let's begin. Shall we? The Eye of Argon. The weather-beaten trail wound ahead into the dust-racked climes of the barren land which dominates large portions of the Norgorlian Empire. Age-worn hoofprints smothered by the sifting sands of time shone dully against the dust-splattered crust of earth.
That was a smile! That was a smile!
That was the weirdest
that was a smirk.
to read! Like, oh my God!
Dust-splattered crust of earth.
The tireless.
The tireless sun cast its parching rays of incandescence from overhead halfway through its daily revolution. Small rodents scampered about, occupying themselves in the daily accomplishments of their dismal lives. Dust sprayed over their heaving mounts in blinding clouds while they bore the burdensome cargoes of their struggling overseers.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused. Are the rodents?
Are the rodents our lords? What's happening?
Are they the cargo bearers? I don't think I've technically laughed yet. I came close to smiling.
Yes.
Quote, prepare to embrace your creators in the Stygian haunts of hell, barbarian, gasped the first soldier. Only after you have kissed the fleeting steed of death, wretch, returned Grignr. A sweeping blade of flashing steel riveted from the massive barbarian's hide-enameled shield as his rippling right arm thrust forth, sending a steel-shod blade to the hilt into the soldier's vital organs. The disemboweled mercenary crumped from his saddle and sank to the clouded sward, sprinkling the parched dust. Oh, I'm close. With crimson droplets of escaping life fluid. I was sitting here thinking, I've read too much of this stuff. Like, it's not getting to me. That escaping life fluid, though.
The enthusted barbarian swiveled about, his shock of fire. That's what it says.
No, the enthused.
The enthused. Enthusted. It looked like
enthusted was great, though.
Yeah. Barbarian swiveled about, his shock of fiery red hair tossing robustly in the humid air currents as he faced the attack of the defeated soldier's fellow in arms. "Damn you, barbarian!" shrieked the soldier. As he observed his comrade in death, a gleaming scimitar smote a heavy blow against the renegade's spiked helmet, bringing a heavy cloud over the accordion's misting brain.
Over the accordions?
Accordions. Accordions.
Okay. That's
misting brain.
Well...
Shaking off the effects of the pounding blow to his head. Wait, what?
You can do that.
Gringer...
This guy's played D&D.
Gringer brought down his scarlet-streaked edge against the soldier's crudely forged hauberk, clinging harmlessly to the left side of his opponent. The soldier's steed whinnied as he directed the horse back from the driving blade of the barbarian. Gringer lashed... let me try that again. Gringer leashed his mount forward? Okay.
Lashed his mount
forward? No, it's leashed.
Oh, yeah. One of the things is that this has been reproduced, typos and all.
Oh, yeah. So,
to be fair.
Yes. Leashed his mount forward as the hoarsely piercing battle cry of his wilderness-bred race resounded from the crowd.
Okay. You're laughing. Gimme, come on.
Oh, God.
The hoarsely piercing wilderness-bred race resounded from his grinding lungs.
Jesus
A
Christ.
twirling blade bounced harmlessly from the mighty thief's buckler as his rolling right arm cleft upward, sending a foot of blinding steel ripping through the Cimmerian's exposed gullet. A gasping gurgle from the soldier's writhing mouth as he tumbled to the golden sand at his feet and wormed agonizingly in his deathbed. Grigner's emerald green orbs glared lustfully at the wallowing soldier. Okay, well, we know what Grigner's into.
Okay.
So it's one of those families.
His scowling voice reverberated over the dying form in a tone of mocking mirth. You city-bred dogs should learn not to antagonize your better.
Oh, now he's Southern?
Apparently.
I say,
sir. Reining his weary mount ahead, Gringer...
Raining?
Well,
maybe.
His weary
that one is raining.
Yeah. Gringer resumed his journey to the Norgelian city of Gorzam, hoping to discover wine, women, and adventure to boil the wild blood coursing through his savage veins. The trek to Gorzam, that's a weird word to say.
The trek to Gorzam.
Yeah. Was forced upon Gringer when the soldiers of Kryn were leashed upon him by a faithless concubine he had wooed. His scandalous activities throughout the Cimmerian city had unleashed throngs of havoc and uproar amongst its refined patrons, leading them
patricians.
Leading them to tack a heavy reward over his head.
So we really don't have room to mock too much.
No,
we're laughing with
because Jason talked.
I do it too.
He had barely managed to escape through the back entrance of the inn he had been guzzling in as a squad of soldiers pounced upon him. After spilling a spout of blood from the leader of the mercenaries as he dismembered one of their officers' arms, he retreated to his mount to make his way towards Gorzam, rumored to contain hordes of plunder and many young wenches for any man who has the backbone to wrest them away. Chapter
2.
Dos.
Arriving after dusk in Gorzam, Grigner, uncapitalized, descended down a dismal alley, reining his horse before a beaten tavern. The red-haired giant strode into the dimly lit hostelry, reeking of foul odors and cheap wine. I guess cheap wine's a good odor. The air was heavy with choking fumes. That's how it's spelled. With choking fumes spewing up from smoldering torches, all one word, encased within Thedan's earthen-packed walls.
Davis was like...
Well, all these words are running together and
exactly.
not capitalized. It's madness. These pack walls.
Tables were clustered with groups of drunken thieves and cutthroats tossing dice or making love to willing prostitutes. Eyeing a slender female crouched alone at a nearby bench, Gringer advanced, wishing to wholesomely occupy his time. I don't think there's nothing wholesome about that, Gringer.
I'm just thinking now of wench on a bench.
Ooh, wench on a bench. The flickering torches cast weird shafts of luminous dancing over the half-naked harlot of his choice, her stringy orchid twines of hair swaying gracefully over the lithe, opaque nose as she raised a half-drained mug to her pale red lips. I want to stop for a moment and just say that this is what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when you are 14 years old and you are given a thesaurus.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I just want to point that out.
This is a big thing creative writing teachers tell you.
Good God.
Just because you know a big word doesn't mean you should use
it. And there's been 100 of them so far.
Many of them spelled correctly.
Yes. Glancing upward, the alluring complexion noted the stalwart giant as he rapidly approached. A faint glimmer sparked from the pair of deep blue ovals of the amorous female as she motioned toward Gringer, enticing him to join her.
I don't think he's used the word eyes once.
No, he hasn't. The barbarian seated himself upon a stool at the wench's side, exposing his body, naked save for a loincloth, brandishing a long steel broadsword, an iron spiraled battle helmet, and a thick leather sandals to her unobstructed view. Like, I didn't need all that. I just needed that he had a loincloth and he went, poop, look at my pee-pee.
Okay.
Thou hast need to occupy your time, barbarian, questioned the female. I don't know why she's got such a heavy voice.
I don't know why she talks like Thor.
I know, right? Only if something... Now he's going to be like, only if something worth offering is within my reach, stated Gringer, as his hands crept to embrace the tempting female, who welcomed them with open willingness. From where do you come, barbarian, and by what are you called? Gasped the complying wench, as Gringer smothered her lips with the blazing touch of his flaming mouth. The engrossed... I can't. I just can't. That's just too much, man.
This one might break us both. The engrossed titan ignored the queries of the inquisitive female, pulling her towards him and crushing her sagging nipples into his yearning chest. Without struggle, she gave in, winding her soft arms around the harshly bronze-hide, one word, of Grigner, Okay, it's just Grigner, not possessive, but Grigner corded shoulder blades as his calloused hands caressed her firm, protruding busts. I think bust is just a singular. You make love well, wench, admitted Grigner as he reached for the vessel. Potent wine his charge had been quaffing. A flying foot caught the mug Grigner had taken hold of, sending its blood-red contents sloshing over a flickering crescent, which I assume is a candle. Leashing tongues of bright orange flame to foot the trodden floor. Remove yourself, sirrah! The wench belongs to me! Ooh. Babbled a drunken soldier, too far consumed by the influences of his virile brew. That's not how you virile. All right. You know what? This is on me. I can't pronounce virile. Virile. Oh man, I can't pronounce it at all. And I know how to say it. Brew, to take note of the superior size of his adversary. And he spelled it right too. That's sad. This is on me. Grigner lithely bounded from the startled female, his face lit up to ashen red ferocity, and eyes locked in a searing feral blaze towards the swaying soldier. Don't practice your alliteration on me. To hell with you, braggart! Bellowed the angered Ecordian as he hefted his finely honed broadsword. The staggering soldier clumsily reached towards the pommel of his dangling sword, but before his hand even touched the oaken hilt, a silvered flash was slicing the heavy air. The thews of the savages lashed... Okay, apostrophes. The thews of the savage's lashing right arm bulged from their glistening bronzed hide as his blade bit deeply into the soldier's neck, lopping off the confused head of his senseless tormentor. With a nauseating thud, the severed oval toppled to the floor as the segregated torso of Grigner's bovine antagonist, he's a cow now, swayed, then collapsed in a pool of swirled crimson. That's blood. In the confusion, the soldiers' fellows confronted Grigner with unsheathed cutlasses. That one's on me. Directed towards the latter's scowling make-up. The slut should have picked his quarry more carefully, roared the victor in a mocking baritone growl as he wiped the dripping blade on the prostrate form and returned it to its scabbard. The fool should have shown more prudence. However, you shall rue your actions while rotting in the pits, stated one of the sprawled soldier's comrades. Grigner's hand began to remove his blade from its leather housing, but retarded the motion in face of the blades waving before his face. Dismiss your hand from the hilt, barbarian, or you shall find a foot of steel sheathed in your gizzard. Grigner weighed his position, observing his plight, where upon he took the soldiers. Oh,
wow.
Yeah, there's a thing.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, possessive. A soldier's advice as the only logical choice. To attempt to hack his way from the present predicament could only warrant certain death. He was of no mind to bring upon his own demise if an alternate path presented itself. The will to necessitate his life forced him to yield to the superior force in hopes of a moment of carelessness later upon the part of his captors. I'm going to laugh just to get a breath. In which he could effect a more plausible means of escape. You may steady your arms. I will go without struggle. Your decision is a wise one, yet perhaps you would have been better off had you forced death. The soldier's mouth wrinkled to a sadistic grin of knowing mirth as he prodded his prisoner with his sword point. After an indiscriminate period of marching through slinking alleyways and dim moonlighted streets, the procession confronted a massive Seraglio. That might be spelled right. I'm not sure what that even is. The palace area was surrounded by an iron grating with a lush garden upon all sides. I guess it's a palace. Okay, I failed my vocabulary. The group was admitted through the gilded gateway, and Grigner was led along, one word, a stone pathway bordered by plush vegetation, lustfully enhanced by the moon's shimmering rays. Oh, those plants.
So lustfully.
He's into dying guys and plants, and wenches. Upon reaching the palace, the group was granted entrance, and after several minutes of explanation, led through the several winding corridors to a richly draped chamber.
Richly draped draper.
Yeah. Okay. Confronting the group was a short, stocky man seated upon a one word, golden throne. Tapestries of richly draped, regal, blue silk covered all walls of the chamber, while the steps leading to the throne were plated with sparkling white ivory. The man upon the throne had a naked wench seated at each of his arms, and a trusted advisor seated in back of him, with no wenches. At each corner, C-O-R-N-W-R, Cornwall, that's an old racist Monty Python sketch, of the chamber, a guard stood at attention with upraised pikes, supported in their hands, golden chainmail adorning their torsos. That one's possessive when it shouldn't be.
Oh my god.
And barred helmets emitting scarlet plumes enshrouding their heads. The man... Okay. The man... Mercy! I'm tapping out.
Let's see.
The man.
Okay. The man rose from his throne to the dais surrounding it. His plush turquoise robe dangled loosely from his chunky frame. Why you gotta be chunky?
Why you gotta hit on the big boys?
I'm just saying, why's he gotta be chunky?
Why's the bad guy always gotta be fat?
I know, what's up with that? The soldiers surrounding Grigner fell to their knees with heads bowed to the stone masonry of the floor in fearful dignity of their sovereign, liege. I don't think it's supposed to be a comma there. Explain the purpose of this intrusion upon my chateau. How's it a chateau all of a sudden?
It's the palace. It's that other thing that I don't know what it is.
Your Serenity, resplendent in noble grandeur, we've brought this yokel before you, the soldier gestured toward Grigner, for the redress of your all-knowing wisdom and judgment regarding his fate. Down on your knees, lout, and pay proper homage to your sovereign, commanded the pudgy noble of Grigner, again with the chunky jokes. By the surly build...
Chateau is a legitimate synonym.
Oh, but yeah. By the surly build of Mrifric.
So is Seragallo.
Gringo kneels to no man, scowled the massive barbarian. You dare to deal this blasphemous act to me? You are indeed brave, stranger, yet your valor smacks of foolishness. I find you to be the only fool sitting upon your pompous throne, enhancing the rolling flabs of your belly in the midst of your elaborate luxuriand. The soldier standing at Gringer's side...
I feel attacked.
I know, right? I laughed at you.
That was my bad.
The soldier standing at Gringer's side smote him heavily in the face with the flat of his sword, cutting short the harsh words and knocking his battered helmet to the masonry with an echoing clang. There's a dash in between echo and ing. Just want you to know that. The paunchy noble's sagging round face flushed suddenly pale. Holy crap. It's like I'm reading Hamilton. Like, only not as good.
Wow. Only not as good.
Not as good. Then pastily lit up to a lustrous cherry red radiance.
Pastily lit up? How's that work?
I'm laughing at you again. His lips trembled with malicious rage.
We're not keeping score. You can...
while emitting a muffled, sibilant gibberish.
Sibilant.
His sagging flabs rolled like a tub of upset jelly. Then... I'm done. I'm done.
I'm like, what is this?
I'm done.
What is all this fat shaming?
I'm so done. That's right.
So you're like, rolled like a tub of upset jelly, then compressed as he sucked in his gut in an attempt to conceal his softness. The prince regained his statue. Yeah, his statue.
Oh.
Then, I was making sure I didn't misread stature, which would be the correct word.
True.
Then spoke to the soldiers surrounding Grigner,
yes,
his face conforming to an ugly expression of sadistic humor. Take this uncouth heathen to the vault of misery, and be sure that his agonies are long and drawn out before death can release him. As you wish, sire. Your command shall be heeded immediately, answered the soldier on the... Well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have fun.
Thur.
It's going to be Thur.
I think with Thur.
As you wish, sire. I was laughing at you. Answered the soldier on the right of Grigner as he stared into the barbarian's seemingly unaffected face. The advisor seated in the back of the noble slowly rose and advanced to the side of his master, motioning the wenches seated at his sides to remove themselves. He lowered his head and whispered to the noble, Eminence, the punishment you have decreed will cause much misery to this scum, yet it will last only a short time, then release him to a land beyond the sufferings of the human body. Why not mellow him out in one of the subterranean vaults for a few days, then send him to life labor in one of your buried mines? To one such as he, a life spent in the confinement of the Stygian pits will be an infinitely more appropriate and lasting torture.
It's a long time to whisper to somebody.
That's a pretty big whisper. The noble cupped his drooping double chin.
Oh my God!
In the folds of his brimming palm, meditating for a moment upon the rationality of the counselor's words, then raised his shaggy brown eyebrows. Man, this guy's got it in for me. And turned towards the... I feel bad about all the nice things I said about this guy at the beginning of the show.
They are kind of shaggy.
They were brown once, too.
They're still kind of brown.
Oh, you turned them pretty gray. And turned towards the advisor, eyes aglow. No, I'm not laughing, but oh my God, the alliteration. As always, Agafind, good old Agafind, you speak with great wisdom. Your words ring... I can't remember what the voice I did like 2 seconds ago. Your words ring of great knowledge concerning the nature of one such as he, saith the king. The noble turned towards the prisoner with a noticeable shimmer reflecting in his frog-like eyes and his lips contorting to a greasy grin. I have decided to void my... Okay, now I'm doing the advisor. I've decided to void my previous decree. The prisoner shall be removed to one of the places... The prisoner shall be removed to one of the palace's underground vaults. There he shall stay until I have decided that he is sufficiently simmered, whereupon he is to be allowed to spend the remainder of his days at labor in one of my mines. Upon hearing this, Grigner realized that his fate would be far less merciful than death to one such as he, who is used to roaming the countryside at will. A life of confinement would be more than his body and mind could stand up to. This type of life would be immeasurably worse than death. We get it. I shall never I'm trying to come up with a voice. I shall never understand the ways of your twisted civilization.
Why is he German?
Because I turned to Arnold.
Okay,
I simply
gotcha.
defend my honor and am condemned to life confinement by a pig who sits on his royal ass wooing whores and knows nothing of the affairs of the land he imagines to rule. Lectures Grigner ? Lectures Grigner? Enough of this. Away with the slut before I lose my control. What's
happening?
Yeah.
When did Grigner become the slut?
Early on,
You dirty slut,
the
you
soldier,
Grigner.
the guy that was mad that he was macking on his whore called him a slut too.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, it is weird. Seeing the peril of his position, Grigner searched for an opening. Crushing Prudence to the sward, he plowed into the soldier at his left arm, taking hold of his sword and bounding to the dais, supporting the prince before the startled guards could regain their composure. Agafund leaped Grigner and his sire, but found a sword blade permeating the length of his ribs before he could loose his weapon.
Oh,
this is like a joint thing: my inability to read and his inability to write.
Right. Yes.
The counselor slumped to his knees as Grigner slid his crimson blade from Agafund's rib. Okay, his name's different now too.
Yeah.
Agafund's rib cage. Agafund's rib cage. The Fat Prince. Down there somewhere.
I'm looking.
I'm just like the fact that the name keeps changing.
The Fat Prince stood undulating.
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 Oh, could it be undulating?
In insurmountable fear before the edge of the fiery maned comet, his flabs of jellied blubber pulsating to and fro in ripples of flowing terror. Where is your wisdom and power now, your majesty? Growled Grigner. The prince went rigid as Grigner discerned him, glazing over his shoulder. He swiveled to note the cause of the noble's attention, raised his sword over his head, and prepared to leash a vicious downward cleft, but fell short of the haft of a steel-rimmed pike clashed against his unguarded skull. The blackness and solitude, silence enshrouding an ever-peaceful reigned supreme. Before me, sirrah, before me as always, nobly cackled. And on that note, before Chapter 3, we're going to take a break so I can transfer the video of this over before it stops. We'll return with Chapter 3 in just a moment.
After these messages, we'll
be right back. And we're back for Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. Weren't you just... Isn't it my turn? Because you just did the last chapter?
Yeah, but...
It's 3.5! Alright.
Alright, I'll just...
I already lost.
Dave's already lost. He's already left.
3.5. Come on.
Consciousness returned to Grigner in stigmatic pools as his mind gradually cleared of the cobwebs cluttering its inner recesses. Yet the Stygian cloud of charcoal ebony remained, an incompatible shield of blackness enhanced by the bleak absence of sound. Gringer's muddled brain reeled from the shock of the blow he had received at the base of his skull. The events leading to his predicament were slow to filter back to him. He dickered with the notion that he was dead, and he descended or sunk. And had descended or sunk. However it may be, to the shadowed land beyond the aperture of the grave, but rejected this hypothesis when his memory sifted back to within his grasps. This was not the land of the dead. It was something infinitely more precarious than anything the grave could offer. Death promised an infinity of peace, not the finite misery of an inactive life of confined torture, forever concealed from the life-bearing shafts of the beloved rising sun. The orb that had been before taken for granted, yet now cherished above all else, to be forever refused further glimpses of the snow-capped summits of the land of his birth, never again to witness the thrill of plundering unexplored lands beyond the crest of the bleeding horizon, and perhaps, worst of all, the denial to ever again encompass the lustful excitement of caressing the naked curves of the body of a trim, yound wench. It says yound.
Those yound wenches.
This was indeed... Let me finish. Let me finish. You can do 3.5.
All right, I'll do 3.5.
This was indeed one of the buried chasms of hell, concealed within the inner depths of the palace's despised interior. A fearful ebony chamber devised to drive to the brinks of insanity the minds of the unfortunately condemned, though the inapt solitude of a limbo of listless, dreary silence. Oh my God.
Chapter 3.
And a half.
And a half.
Dun dun dun.
A tightly wrung elliptical circle or torches cast their wavering shafts.
Are you done already?
English! Do you speak it?
It's supposed to be.
Come on, man. At 14, At 14, I can construct sentences. A tightly wrung elliptical circle or torches cast their wavering shafts, prancing morbidly over the smooth surface of a rectangular, ridged altar, misspelled. Expertly chiseled forms of grotesque gargoyles graced the oblique rim, protubrating the length of the grim orifice of death, staring forever ahead into nothingness.
Nothingness.
That one was on me.
Too many nessnesses.
In complete ignorance of the bloody rites enacted in their presence. Brown flaking stains decorated the golden surface of the ridge surrounding the altar. Again misspelled. They're spelling it with an E instead of an A.
Oh, instead of an A?
Which banked to a small slit. Uh-oh. No, it wasn't a laugh. I got stuff in my throat. At the lower... That was me. You making me laugh.
That was me.
Small slit at the lower right... We're disrupting the people's ability to enjoy the story. Sorry, I should have brought water too. Oh, this slit. Which banked to a small slit at the lower right-hand corner of the altar. He spelled it right once. The slit stood above a crudely pounded pail. Man, this is like porn.
I have to say, his 14-year-old mind.
Yeah.
Right on the straight and narrow, let me tell you.
Hey, Penthouse, you won't believe this, but I was in a slit. Which had several silver meshed chalices hanging at its sides. Dangling at the rim of, one word, golden mallet, the handle of which was engraved with images of twisted faces and groveled at its far end with slots designed for a snug hand grip. The head of the mallet was slightly larger than a clenched fist and shaped into a smooth oval mass. Oh. Encircling the marble altar was a congregation of leering shaman. Eerie chants of a bygone age. Originating, thank you.
You're welcome.
Unknown eons before the memory of man were being uttered from the buried recesses of the acolyte's deep lings.
Utter.
I think that's supposed to be lungs. Orange paint was smeared in generous globules. No, there's no T. Globules.
Jesus.
Okay. Pronounce that one. Over the tops of the PHW priests' wrinkled, shaven scalps, while golden rings projected from the lobes of their pink ears. Ornate robes of luscious purple satin. This guy's got, like... G.R. Martin has nothing on this guy. Enclosed their bulging torsos, attached around their waist with silvered silk lashes, latched with ebony buckles in the shape of morose, misshaped skulls.
Look at these Dangling around
their necks were oval-fashioned medallions held by thin gold chains, featuring in their centers blood-red rubies, misspelled, which resembled crimson fetish eyeballs. Oh, you can finally use the word eyeball.
Jesus.
Cushioning their bare feet were plush red felt slippers with pointed golden spikes projecting from their tips. Situated in front of the altar and directly adjacent to their copper pail, there was a copper pail somewhere.
Copper pails.
Was a massive jade idol, a misshaped, hideous bust of the shaman's pagan deity. The shimmering green idol was placed in a sitting posture on an ornately carved golden throne raised upon a round Divory, I think it's supposed to be ivory, but it's with a D, plated dais. It bulging arms and webbed hands resting on the padded arms of the seat. Its head was entwined in golden snake-like coils, hanging over its oblong ears, which tapered off to thin hollow points. Its nose was a bulging triangular mass, sunken in at its sides with toe-gaping nostrils. Dramatic beneath the nostrils was a twisted, shaggy lipped mouth.
I hate when my toes have gaping nostrils.
I do too. Well, no, it's TW, it's TOW, I think. Sorry.
I hate it when my boat's toe draping nostrils.
You're gonna have to take over. I'm gonna cough.
Dramatic beneath the nostrils was a twisted, shaggy lipped mouth, giving the impression of a slavering, sadistic grimace. At the foot of the heathen deity, a slender, pale-faced female, naked, but for a golden, jeweled harness, enshrouding her huge, outcropping breastises. Supporting long silver laces, which extended to her thigh, stood before the pearl-white field, with noticeable shivers traveling up and down the length of her exquisitely molded body. Her delicate lips trembled beneath soft, narrow hands as she attempted to conceal herself from the piercing stare of the ambivalent idol. Glaring directly down towards her was the stony, cycloptic face of the bloated deity, gaping from its single oblong socket. It's what it says. Was scintillating, many-faceted, scarlet emerald, a brilliant gem seeming to possess a life all its own, a priceless, gleaming stone capable of domineering the wealth, of conquering enemies, the Eye of Argon.
Hey!
Dun, dun, dun!
All right, I mean,
the Grimmer is cooking!
All knowledge of measuring time had escaped Grigner. When a person is deprived of the sun, moon, and stars, he loses all conception of time, as he had previously understood it. It seemed as if years had passed, if time were being measured by terms of misery and mental anguish. Yet he estimated that his stay had only been a few days in length. He has slept 3 times, and had been fed 5 times since his awakening in the crypt. However, when the actions of the body are restricted, its needs are also affected. The need for nourishment and slumber are directly proportional to the functions the body has performed, meaning that when free and active, Grigner may become hungry every 6 hours and witness the desire for sleep every 15 hours, whereas in his present condition, he may encounter the need for food every 10 hours and the want for rest every 20 hours.
Why did we need that exposition?
Very important stuff.
Apparently.
All methods he had before depended upon were extinct in the dismal pit. Hence, he may have been in prison for 10 minutes or 10 years. He did not know, resulting in a disheartened emotion deep within his being. He was sad.
Oh.
So we should have put a new spin on this. I'm realizing now we should have just had one person read it and the other person translate. Hims was sad.
Hims was sad.
The food, if you can honor the moldering lumps of fetid mush to that extent, was borne to him by 2 guards, who opened a portal at the top of his enclosure and shoved it to him in wooden bowls, retrieving the food and water bowels from his previous meal at the same time. Bowels.
That's where
bowels got me.
And it literally says that.
It does.
Let's see, where is it?
It was right after bowels. So.
Enclosure and shoved it to him in wooden bowels.
Yes, in wooden bowels.
Retrieving the food and water. Yes. After which they threw back the bolts on the iron latch and returned to their other duties. Since deprived of all other means of nourishment, Gringer was impelled to eat the tainted slop in order to ward off the pangs of starvation. Though, as he stuffed it into his mouth with his filthy fingers and struggled to force it down his throat, he imagined it was that which had been spurned by the hounds stationed at various segments of the palace.
The food wasn't good.
There was little in the barren vault that could occupy his body or mind. He had paced out the length and width of the enclosure time and time again, and tested every granite slab which consisted the walls of the prison in hopes of finding a hidden passage. That's what it says. Mm-hmm. Hopes of finding a hidden passage to freedom.
Yeah, we gotta be fair when it's us.
Whew. All of which was to no avail, other than to keep him busy and distract his mind from wandering to thoughts of what he believed was his future. He had memorized the number of strides from one end to the other of the cell, and knew the exact number of slabs which made up the bleak dungeon.
Which I will now describe in excruciating detail.
Numerous schemes, that was me laughing at you.
Is it numerous or numerous?
Numerous schemes were introduced and alternately discarded in turn, as they succored to unravel to him no means of escape which stood the slightest chance of success. Anguish continued to mount, as his means of occupation were rapidly exhausted. I had to burp. Suddenly, without no tithe... I don't even know what that word means.
Tithe?
Yeah.
It means to give to a god.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. He was rotted. All one word, was rotted. from his contemplations as he detected a faint scratching sound at the end of the crypt opposite of him. The sound seemed to be caused by something trying to scrape away at the granite blocks the floor of the enclosure consisted of.
Hence the scrapping sound.
The sandy scratching of something like an animal's claws. Gringer gradually groped his way to the other side, the other end of the vault, carefully feeling his way along with his hands ahead of him. When a few inches from the wall, a loud, penetrating squeal and the scampering of small padded feet reverberated from the walls of the roughly hewn chamber. Gringer threw his hands up to shield his face and flung himself backwards upon his buttocks. A fuzzy form bounded to his hairy chest, burying its talons in his flesh while gnashing towards his throat with its grinding white teeth, its sour, fetid breath scorching the skirming barbarian's dilating nostrils. Gringer grappled with the lashing flexor muscles of the repugnant body of a gargantuan brown-hided rat, striving to hold its razor teeth from his juicy jugular, as its beady gray organs of sight glazed into the flaring emeralds of its prey. Taking hold of the rodent round its lean, growling stomach with both hands, Gringer pried it from his crimson-rent breast, removing small patches of flayed flesh from his chest in the motion between the squalid black claws of the starving beast. Holding the rodent at arm's length, he cupped his right hand, one word, over its frothing face, constricting his fingers. It literally says constricting.
Okay.
His fingers into a vice-like fist over the quivering head. Retaining his grips on the rat, Gringer flexed his outstretched arms while slowly twisting his right hand clockwise and his left hand counterclockwise motion. The rodent let out a tortured squall, drawing scarlet as it violently dug its foam-flecked fangs into the barbarian's sweating palms, causing his face to contort to an ugly grimace as he cursed beneath his breath. With a loud crack, the rodent's head parted from its squirming torso, sending out a sprinkling shower of crimson gore, and trailing a slimy string of disjointed vertebrae, snapped trachea, esophagus, and a jugular, disjointed highbone bone, morose purpled stretch hide, and blood-seared muscles. Son of a bitch!
Are there any other organs left for this animal to lose?
I don't know. That was the worst thing I've ever read.
Flinging the broken body to the floor, Gringer shook his blood-streaked hands and wiped them against his thigh until dry. Well, who doesn't do that?
His thigh until Johnny was a poet, didn't know it.
Then wiped the blood that had showered his face from his eyes. Again, sitting himself upon the jagged floor, he prepared once more to revamp his glum meditations. He told himself that as long as he still breathed the gust of life through his lungs, hope was not lost. He told himself this, but
breathe, damn it!
But found it hard to comprehend in his gloomy surroundings. Yet, he was still alive, his bulging sinews at the peak of marvel, his struggling mind floating in a mirror of impressed excellence of thought. Plot after plot sifted through his mind in energetic contemplations. Then it hit him. Minutes may have passed in silent thought, or days, he could not tell. But he stumbled at last upon a plan that he considered as holding a slight margin of plausibility.
Dun dun dun!
He might die in the attempt, but he knew that he would not submit without a final bloody struggle. It was not a foolproof plan, yet it built up a store of renewed vortexed energy in his overwrought soul, one word. Though he might perish in the execution of the escape, he would still be escaping the life of infinite torture in store for him, one word. Either way, he would still cheat the gloating prince of the succored revenge his sadistic mind craved so dearly. The guards would come soon to bear him off to the prince's buried mines of dread. Why would you mind dread? Giving him the sought-after opportunity to execute his newly formulated plan. Groping his way along the rough floor, Gringer finally found his tool in a pool of congealed gore, the carcass of the decapitated rodent, the tool that the very filth he had been sentenced to spawned. When the time came for action, he would have to be prepared, so he set himself to rending the sticky hulk in grim silence, searching by the touch of his fingertips for the lever to freedom.
I don't know if anyone else could hear it, but when he found that rat's bone, all I could hear in my head was the Legend of Zelda, dun 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 dun.
Chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
God, how many chapters are in this?
I don't know. It's 74 pages.
Oh, so not that.
Oh, there's more half chapters too.
Oh, goody. Up to the altar and be done with it, wench! Ordered a fidgeting shaman.
How come you get all the ones with the hot girl?
Oh, that's weird.
That ain't right.
Ordered a fidgeting shaman as he gave the female a grim stare, accompanied by the wrinkling of his lips to a mirthful grin of delight. The girl burst into a slow, steady whimper, stooping shakily to her knees and cringing woefully from the priest with both arms wound snake-like around the bulging jade shin rising. Literally, it says the bulging jade shin rising before her scantily attired figure. Her face was redly inflamed from the salty flow of tears sprouting from her glassy, dilated eyeballs. Oh, we said eyeballs.
Hey! I think that's two.
That's two. With short, heavy footfalls, the priest approached the female, his piercing stare never wavering from her quivering young countenance.
What? What is that word?
Continence.
Oh, continence.
I said countenance, and it threw Dave completely for a loop.
In this book, you believe it.
Yes. Halting before the terrified girl, he projected his arm outward and motioned her to arise with an upward movement of his hand. The girl's whimpering increased slightly, and she sunk closer to the floor rather than arising. The flickering torches outlined her trim build with a weird ornate glow as it cast a ghostly shadow dancing in a horrid waves of splendor over smoothly worn whiteness of the marble-hewn altar. We spelled altar right.
Oh, did he? Good.
The shaman's lip curled back farther, exposing a set of blackened, decaying molars, which transformed his slovenly grin into a wide, greasy arc of sadistic mirth, and alternately interposed into the female a strong sensation of stomach-curdling nausea. "Have it as you will, female," gloated the enhanced priest as he bent over at the waist, projecting his ape-like arms forward, and clasped the female's slender arms with his hairy, round fists. With an inward surge of his biceps, he harshly jerked the trembling girl to her feet and smothered her saltly wet cheeks with the moldy touch of his decrepit, dull red lips. Mwah! The vile stench of the shaman's hot, fetid breath overcame the nauseated female with a dim, soul-searing sickness, causing her to wrench her head backwards and regurgitate a slimy, orange-white stream of swelling gore over the richly woven purple robe of the enthused acolyte. The priest's lips trembled with malicious rage as he removed his callous paws from the girl's arms and replaced them with tightly around her undulating neck, shaking her violently to and fro. The girl gasped a tortured groan from her clamped lungs, her sea-blue eyes bulging forth from damp sockets. Cocking her right foot backwards, she leashed it desperately outwards with the strength of a demon possessed, lodging her sandaled foot squarely between the shaman's testicles.
I am genuinely surprised there was not an entire paragraph describing, using every way to describe testicles other than the word testicles.
The startled priest released his crushing grip, crimping his body over at the waist, overlooking his recessed belly, wide open in a deep chasm. His face flushed to a rose-red shade of crimson, eyelids fluttering wide, with eyeballs protruding blindly outwards from their sockets to their outmost perimeters, while his lips quivered wildly, about allowing an agonized wallow to gust forth as his breath billowed from burning lungs. His hands reached out, clutching his urinary gland. Well, that's new. As his knees wobbled rapidly. I'm laughing at Dave.
Urinary gland.
As his knees wobbled rapidly about for a few seconds, then buckled, causing the ruptured shaman to collapse in an egg-huddled mass to the granite pavement.
Does it say egg huddled?
It does say egg huddled.
Oh, dear God.
Rolling helplessly about in his agony. The pathetic screeches of the shaman groveling in dejected misery upon the hand-hewn granite-laid pavement. Jesus Christ. Worn smooth by countless hours of arduous sweat and toil, a welter of ichor oozing through his clenched hands attracted the perturbed attention of his comrades from their foetid ululations. The actions of this rebellious wench bespoke the credence unheard of in a sacrilege, the credence of an unheard of sacrilege. Never before in a lost maze of untold eons had a chosen one dared to demonstrate such blasphemy in the face of the cult's idolic deity. The girl cowered in unreasoning terror, helpless in the face of the emblazoned acolyte's rage, her orchid-tussled face smothered betwixt her bulging bosom, as she shut her curled lash tightly, hoping to open them and find herself awakening from a morbid nightmare. Yet the hand of destiny decreed her no such mercy. The agonized pack of leering shaman, converging tensely upon her prostrate form, were entangled all too lividly in the grim web of reality. Shuddering from the clammy touch of the shaman as they grappled with her supple form, hands wrenching at her slender arms and legs in all directions, her bare body being molested in the midst of a labyrinth of orange smudges, purpled satin, and mangled skulls, shadowed in an eerie crimson glow, her confused head reeled, then clouded in a mist of enshrouding ebony, as she lapsed beneath the protective sheet of unconsciousness to land peach and resign. Oh my God!
Good old land of peach and resign.
I'm at a loss for words. I really am.
Really? Because he's not.
I know he's not at all.
Take hold of this rope, said the first soldier, and climb out from your pit, slut. We're back to that.
Great.
Your presence is requested in another far deeper hellhole. Grigner slipped his right hand to his thigh, concealing a small opaque object beneath the folds of the G-string wrapped around his waist.
God. Keep reading.
Okay. Brine wells swelled in Grigner's cold, jade squinting eyes, which, grown accustomed to the gloom of the Stygian pools of ebony engulfing him, were bedazzled and blinded by flickering radiance cast forth by the second soldier's resin torch. Tightly gripped in the second soldier's right hand, opposite the intermittent torch, was a large double-edged axe, a long leather-wound oaken handle transfixing the center of the weapon's iron head. Adorning the torsos of both of the sentries were thin yet sturdy hauberks, the breastplates of which were woven of tightly hemmed twines of reinforced silver braiding. Gasp. Cupping the soldiers' feet were thick leather sandals, wound about their shins to 2 inches below their knees. Wrapped about their waists were wide satin girdles, with slender-bladed poniards dangling loosely from them, the hilts of which featured scarlet-encrusted gems. Resting upon the manes of their heads and reaching midway to their brows were smooth copper morions. Spiraling the lower portion of the helmet were short, upcurved silver spikes, with a golden hump spired from the top of each bassinet. Beneath their chins, wound around their necks and draping their clad shoulders, dangled regal purple satin cloaks, which flowed midway to the soldiers' feet. They wore clothes. Uncapitalized, hand over hand, feet braced against the dank walls of the enclosure, huge Grigner ascended from the moldering depths of the forlorn abyss, his swelled limbs, stiff due to the boredom of a timeless inactivity, tell me about it, compounded by the musty atmosphere, I think that might be atmosphere, and jagged granite protrusion against his body, craved for action. The opportunity now presenting itself served the purpose of oiling his rusty joints and honing his dulled senses. He braced himself, facing the second soldier. The sentry's stature was wildly exaggerated in the glare of the flickering crescent cuppix in his right fist. His eyes were wide open in a slightly slanted owlish gaze, enhanced in their sinister intensity by the hawkbill curve of his nose and pale, yellow peak of his cheeks. "Place your hands behind your back," said the second soldier as he raised his axe over his right shoulder blade and cast it a wavering glance. "We must bind your wrists to parry any attempts at escape. Be sure to make the knot a stout one, Broig. We wouldn't want our guest to take leave of our guidance." Broig grasped Grigner's left wrist and reached for the barbarian's right wrist. Grigner wrenched his right arm free and swiveled to face Broig. Reach dashed beneath his loin-cloth with his right hand. The sentry grappled at his girdle for the sheathed dagger, but recoiled short of his intentions as Grigner's right arm swept to his gorge. The soldier went limp, his bobbing eyes rolling beneath fluttering eyelids. Well, that's 4. A deep welt across his spouting gullet. Without I think he got stabbed with a dead rat.
That's what it sounds like.
Without lingering... Well, he doesn't say that, of course, but...
But he says everything else!
He says literally everything else. We know exactly how Broig is dressed. I want to give myself credit for not laughing at Broig, for the record.
Broig.
Broig. That's the license plate they have at Itchy and Scratchy Land. Grigner dropped to his knees. The second soldier's axe cleft over Grigner's head in a blaze of silvered ferocity, severing several scarlet locks from his scalp. Remember, Grigner's a redhead.
Yes.
So he has no soul.
No.
Coming to rest in his fellow's stomach, the iron head crashed through mail and flesh with splintering force, spilling a pool of crimson entrails over the granite paving. Before the sentry... This is the exciting part, man. This is the big fight scene. Before the sentry could wrench his axe free from his comrade's carcass, he found Grigner's massive hands clasped about his throat, choking the life from his clamped lungs. With a zealous grunt, the accordion flexed his tightly corded biceps, forcing the grim-faced soldier to one knee. The sentry plunged his right fist into Grigner's face, digging his grimy nails into the barbarian's flesh. Ejaculating a curse through the rasping teeth.
Well, what?
Grigner ejaculating a curse through the rasping teeth. Grigner, uncapitalized, surged the bulk of his weight forward, forward, bowling the besieged. I'm laughing at you. Bowling the besieged soldier upon his back. The sentry's arms collapsed to his thigh, shuddering convulsively, his bulging eyes staring blindly from a bloated cherry-red face. Rising to his feet, Grigner shook the blood, B-L-L-O-D, from his eyes, ruffling his surly red mane as a brush fire swaying to the nighttime breeze. Stooping over the sprawled corpse of the first soldier, SPR, sprawled corpse of the first soldier, Grigner retrieved a small white object from a pool of congealing gore. Snorting a gusty billow of mirth, he once more concealed the tiny object. There's a gap. He was typing V, but there was a gap. The tiny object beneath his loincloth. The tediously honed pelvis bone of the broken rodent. Oh, okay. He picked up... I thought it was a key, but it was actually just the tediously honed pelvis bone of a broken rodent. Returning his attention... I was kind of laughing at the situation, but if you want the book, you can have it.
It's up to you.
Okay, returning his attention toward the second soldier, Grigner turned to the task of attiring his limbs. To move about freely through the dim recesses of the castle would require the grotesque garb of its soldiery. He needed to dress in the costume like Han Solo and Luke and the Death Star. Utilizing the silence and stealth acquired in the untamed climes of his childhood, Grigner slunk through the twisting corridors and winding stairways, lighting his way with the confiscated torch of his dispatched guardian. Knowing where his steps were leading to, Grigner meandered aimlessly in search of an exit from the chateau's dim confines. The wild blood coursing through his veins yearned for the undefiled freedom of the livid wilderness lands. Coming upon a fork in the passage, he shrieked. Coming to a fork upon the passage, he shrieked.
Oh my God! It's
voices accompanied by clinking footfalls discerned to his sensitive ears from the left corridor. Wishing to avoid contact, Grigner veered to the right passageway. If accosted as to the purpose of his presence, his barbarous accent would reveal his identity, being that his attire was not that of the castle's mercenary troops. I thought it was. I thought he changed clothes. In grim silence, Grigner treaded down the dingily lit corridor, a stalking panther creeping warily along on padded feet. Oh my God. This is the chapter. After an interminable period of wandering through the dull corridors, no gaps to break the monotony of the cold gray walls, Grigner espied a small winding stairway, descending the flight of arched granite.
I like when I espy things.
I do too. I espy with my little eye. Arched granite slabs to their posterior. Grigner was confronted by a short hallway, H-A-L-W-A-Y.
Hallway.
Yeah, hallway. Leading to a tall, arched wooden doorway. Halting before the teeming portal, Grigner rests his shaggy head sideways against the barrier. Detecting no sounds from within, he grasped the looped metal, M-E-T-E-L, metal metal handle of the door, his arms surging with a tremendous effort of bulging muscles, yet the door would not budge. Retrieving his axe from where he had sheathed it beneath his girdle, I thought he just wore a loincloth. Did he take the uniform or not? He hefted it with his mighty hands in an appeased grunt. I'm going to need a ruling. Appeased grunt.
I'm guessing.
Whew. And wedging one of its blackened edges into the crack between the portal and its iron-rimmed sill. I think he misspelled sill. Bracing his sandaled right foot, because you've got to know exactly which foot. Bracing his sandaled right foot against the Rougly hewn wall, teeth tightly clenched, Grigner appy-levered the oaken haft, employing it as a lever, which is what you do when you appy-lever.
Apparently.
Whereby to pry open the barrier. So he appy-levered the thing, using it as a lever to lever the thing to pry.
I'm so confused right now.
He stuck a thing into the door and used it as a lever.
Stuck a thing in the thing and thing in the thing.
Yeah, but like he said it 3 times. This is Mojo Jojo.
Mojo Jojo.
The round hilt bending to it's probably racist. To its utmost hilt limits of endurance. The massive portal swung with a grating of snapped latch and rusty iron hinges. So he broke the door open.
Gotcha.
He rolled his break doors.
Me follow well.
I mean, I'm hanging on there. Glancing about the dust-swirled room in the gloom... How come you get the hot girl? Gloomily dancing glare of his flickering cresset, Grigner eyed evidences of the enclosure being nothing more than a forgotten storeroom. Miscellaneous articles required for the maintenance of the castle were piled in disorganized heaps at infrequent intervals towards the wall opposite the barbarian's piercing stare. Utilizing long bounding strides, Grigner paced his way over to the mounds of supplies to discover if any articles of value were contained within their midst. He found a storeroom. He's looking for stuff. Detecting a faint clinking sound, Grigner sprawled to his left side with the speed of a striking cobra, landing harshly upon his back, torch and axe loudly clattering to the floor in a morass of sparks and flames. Elm woven, it should be elm woven, board, I don't know what elm woven is, board leaped from collapsed flooring, clashing against the jagged flooring and spewing a shower of orange and yellow sparks over Grigner's startled face. Rising uneasily to his feet, the half-stunned accordion glared down at the gruesome arm of death he had unwittingly sprung. Murphic!
I have to transform a rock lord because it makes more sense than this right
Murphic, he said. M-R-I-F-I-K exclamation point. Murphic! If not for his keen... Okay. But it's almost to the end of the thing.
If not for his keen auditory organs and lightning...
Also known as ears.
Yes. Lightning... I'm laughing at Dave.
I know.
Dear Lord. And his lightning steel reflexes, Grigner would have been groping through the shadowed hell pits of the Grim Reaper.
I gotta stretch.
He had unknowingly stumbled upon an ancient, long-forgotten booby trap, a mistake which would have stunted the perusal of longevity and one less agile. A mechanism similar in type to that of a miniature catapult was concealed beneath 2 collapsible sections of granite flooring. The arm of the device was 4 feet long, boasting razor-like cleats at regular intervals along its face, with which it was to skewer the luckless body of its would-be victim. Grigner had stepped upon a concealed catch, which released a small metal latch beneath the 2 granite sections, causing them to fall inward, and thereby loose the spiked arm of death they precariously held in. Partially out of curiosity and partially out of inordinate fear of becoming a pincushion for a possible second trap, Grigner plunged his torch into the exposed gap in the floor. The floor of a second chamber stood out 7 feet below the glare. Tossing his torch through the aperture...
Well, now let's describe the second chamber in excruciating detail.
Grigner grasped the side of an adjoining tile, dropping down. Glancing about the room, Grigner discovered that he had descended into the palace's mausoleum. Rectangular stone crypts cluttered the floor at evenly placed intervals. The tops of the enclosures were plated with thick layers of virgin gold. How does gold become virgin? I don't want to know.
Saves it for their wedding day.
While the sides were planted with white ivory, at one time sparkling, but now grown dingy through the passage of
the ivory
rays
was a virgin.
Of all-encompassing...
The ivory was a bigger slut than Grigner.
Of all-encompassing. It says all-encompassing.
Isn't that... never mind. I've lost the joke.
Mother Time.
God, I can't remember the guy's name.
Featured at the head of each sarcophagus...
We're living here in Allencompassing.
Allentown.
Yes, but I can't remember who was the very famous rock and roll singer.
Billy Joel?
No, not Billy. It wasn't Billy Joel. It was the other guy. Born to Run.
Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce Springsteen. Yeah.
Featured at the head of each.
Leave it in the comments.
Featured at the head of each sarcophagus.
And we've been reading this book for like an hour.
In tarnished silver was an expugnively carved likeness of its rotting inhabitant. That's a word, ladies and gentlemen.
It might actually be a word.
It probably is, but it's terrible.
It's probably a word that nobody uses, but he found in a thesaurus.
A dingy atmosphere pervaded the air of the chamber, which, sealed in the enclosure for an unknown period, had grown thick and stale. Intermingling with the curdled currents was the repugnant stench of slowly moldering flesh, creeping ever slowly but surely through minute cracks in the numerous vaults. Due to the embalming of the bodies, their flesh decayed at a much slower rate than is normal, yet the nauseous odor was none the less repellent. I don't think they did that back then.
Even if, do we really need this?
No, probably not.
Is this the crypt smelled bad because there were dead people in it?
Oh my god, this chapter's long.
Yes, tell me about it.
Towering over Gringer's head was the trap he released, the mechanism of...
Oh dear god, not the trap again.
...of the miniaturized catapult.
Yes, it was a miniaturized catapult. Thank you.
Was cluttered with mildew and cobwebs. Notwithstanding these relics of antiquity, its efficiency remained unimpeded. To the right of the trap wound a short stairway through a recess in the ceiling. A concealed entrance, leading to the mausoleum for which the catapult had obviously been erected as a silent, relentless guardian. Climbing up the side of the device, Gringer set to the task of resetting its mechanism in the event that a search was organized. It would prove well to leave no evidence of his presence open to wondering eyes. Besides, it might even serve to dwindle the size of an opposing force. Descending from his perch, Gringer was startled by a faintly muffled scream of horrified desperation. His hair prickled yawkishly in disorganized clumps along his scalp. As a cold danced along the length of his spinal cord, no mortal barrier, human or otherwise, was capable of arousing the number of sensations of fear inside of Gringer's smoldering soul. However, he was overwrought by the forces of the barbarian's instinctive fear of the supernatural. His mighty thews had always served to adequately conquer any tangible foe, but the intangible was something distant and terrible. Dim, horrifying tales passed by word of mouth over glimmering campfires and skins of wine had more than once served the purpose of chilling the marrowed core of his sturdy limbered bones. Yet the scream contained a strangely human quality, unlike that which Gringer imagined would come from the lungs of a demon or spirit, making Gringer take short, nervous strides, advancing to the sarcophagus from which the sound was issuing. Clenching his teeth in an attempt to steel his jangled nerves, Gringer slid the engraved slab from the vault with a sharp rasp of grinding stone. Another long, dry cry of terror, infested anguish, met the barbarian, scoring like the shrill piping of a demented banshee, piercing the inner fibers of this superstitious brain with primitive dread and awe.
Aww.
Stooping over the the tomb's contents, the glittering accordion's nostril were singed by the scorching aroma of a moldering corpse long shut up and fermenting, the same putrid scent which had permeated the entire chamber, though multiplied to a much more concentrated dosage. The shriveled, leathery packet of crumbling bones and dried, flaking flesh offered no resistance, but remained in a fixed position of perpetual vigilance, watching over its dim abode from hollow, gaping sockets. The torture cries were not coming from the tomb, but from some hidden depth below. Pulling the reeking corpse from its resting place, Gringer tossed it to the floor in a broken, mangled heap. Upon one side of the crypt's bottom was attached a series of tiny hinges, while running parallel along the opposite side of the convex railing like a protuberance, laid so as to appear as part of the interior surface of the sarcophagus. Raising the slab upon its broad hinges, long removed from the gaze of human eyes, Gringer perceived a scene which caused his blood to smolder not unlike bubbling molten lava. Directly below him, a whimpering female lay stretched upon a smooth, surfaced marble altar. A pack of Gracie supposed to be greasy. It says crazy. Face shaman clustered around her in a tight circular formation. Crouched over the girl was a tall, pot-bellied priest, his face dominated by a disgusting, open-mouthed grimace of sadistic glee. Suspended from the acolyte's clenched right hand was a carven, oval-faced mallet, which he waved menacingly over the girl's shadowed face, an incoherent gibberish flowing from his grinning, thick-lipped mouth. In the face of the amorphous, broad-breasted female stretched out alluringly before his gaping eyes, the universal whim of nature filling a plea of despair inside of his white-hot soul. Gringer acted in the only manner he could perceive. Giving vent to a hoarse, throat-rending battle cry, Gringer plunged into the midst of the startled shaman, torch simmering in his left hand and axe twirling in his right hand. When the hell did he get a weapon?
I think from the guard.
Jesus, I don't remember that. A giant skull-faced priest standing at the far side of the altar clutched desperately at his throat, coughing furiously in an attempt to catch his breath. Lurching helplessly to and fro, the acolyte pitched headlong against the gleaming base of a massive jade idol. Writhing agonizedly against the hideous image, foam flecking his chalk-white lips, the priest struggled helplessly, the victim of an epileptic seizure.
What?
Yeah.
Well, that was well-timed.
Mm-hmm. Startled by the barbarian's stunning appearance, the chronic fit of their fellow, and the fear of that Gringer might be the avant-garde of a conquering force dedicated to the cause of destroying their degenerated cult, the Saman, momentarily lost their composure.
Those darn salmon.
Giving vent to heedless pandemonium, the priest fell easy prey to Gringer's sweeping arc of crimsy death and maiming.
Is it really crimsy?
Yeah, it really is. The acolyte performing the sacrifice, I told you, the acolyte performing the sacrifice took a vicious blow to the stomach, hands clutching vitals and severed spinal cord as he sprawled over the altar. The disorganized priests lurched and straggled, with split skulls, disemboweled limbs, and spewing entrails before the enraged accordion's relentless onslaught.
Well, now, hang on. He hasn't described every single organ that spilled out of them.
Give it a minute. The howls of the maimed and dying reverberated against the walls of the tiny chamber, a chorus of hell fraught despair, as the granite floor read red with blood. The entire chamber was encompassed in the heat of a raw, savage butchery, as Gringer luxuriated in the grips of a primitive, beastly bloodlust. Presently, all was silent, save for the abetting groans of the sinking shaman and Gringer's heaving breath, accompanied by several gutsy curses. The well had run dry. No more lambs remained for the slaughter.
Wow.
The rampaging stead of death, having taken of Gringer for the moment, left the barbarian free to the exploitation of his other perusals. Towering over the head was a misshapen image of the cult's hideous deity, Argon. The fantastic Argon. Sorry. The fantastic size of the idol. He was the
big hero. He was the one true king.
The fantastic size of the idol,
this
in
book
consideration of its being of pure jade, was enough to cause the senses of any man to stagger and reel. Yet, thus was not the case for the behemoth. He had paid only a casual notice to the incredible fact. While riveting the whole of his attention upon the jewel protruding from the idol's sole socket, its masterfully cut faucets emitting blinding rays of hypnotizing beauty. After all, a man cannot sink from a heavenly guarded palace while burdened down by the intense bulk of a squatting statue, providing, of course, that the idol can be even hefted, which in fact was beyond the reaches of Gringer's coursing stamina. On the other hand, the jewel, gigantic as it was, would not present a hindrance of any mean concern.
The statue is too big, so he's just going to steal the rock.
Help me, please. I can make it well worth your while, pleaded a soft, anguish-strewn voice, wafting over Gringer's shoulders as he plucked the dull red emerald from its roots. Turning, Gringer faced the female.
The dull red emerald?
Yeah. Turning, yeah, no, wait a minute, yeah. Dave,
I don't know that much about gemology. I mean, maybe.
Turning, Gringer faced the female that had lured him into this bloodbath, but whom had become all but forgotten in the heat of battle. You! Ejaculated the accordion in a pleasured tone.
Oh,
I thought that I had seen the last of you at the tavern, but verily I was mistaken.
Okay, red emeralds are a real thing.
Gringer advanced into the grips of the female's entrancing stare.
Get back to the ejaculation.
Severing the golden chains that held her captive upon the altar's highly polished face of ornamental limestone. As Gringer lifted the girl from the altar, her arms wound dexterously around his neck, soft and smooth against his harsh exterior. Art thou pleased that we have a chance to meet once again? Gringer merely voiced an unsighted grunt, returning the damsel's embrace.
We need a citation for that grunt.
Yeah. While he smothered her trim, delicate lips between the coursing protrusions of his reeking maw. "Let us take leave of this wretched chamber," stated Gringar as he placed the female upon her feet. She swooned a moment, causing Gringar to give her support, then regained her stance. "Art thou able to find your way through the accursed passages of this castle? Mrifric! Every one of the corridors of this damned place are identical." All right, we had to stop and flip.
We also had to check. Apparently, red emeralds are beryl. Yes. Are known as beryl.
So, continuing on with this long-ass chapter. I was at one time a slave of Prince Aphagim. His clammy touch sent a sour swill through my belly, but my efforts reaped a harvest. I gained the pig's liking, whereby he allowed me the freedom of the palace. It was through this means that I eventually managed to escape at the western gate. His trust found him with a dagger, thrust his ribs, the wench stated whimsicorically. "What were you doing at the tavern whence I discovered you?" asked Gringar as he lifted the female through the opening into the mausoleum. "I had sought to lay low from the palace's guards as they conducted their search for me.
By acting as a prostitute in a tavern."
Yes. "The tavern was seldom frequented by the palace guards, and my identity was unknown to the common soldiers. It was through the disturbance that you caused that the palace guards were attracted to the tavern. I was dragged away shortly after you were escorted to the palace." "What are you called by, female?"
Oh, here we go.
"Carthena, daughter of Mincardus, Duke of Barwago, whose land borders along the northwestern fringes of Gorzam. I was paid as homage to the Aphapem upon his 38th year, Husk the Fem."
Husk the Fem?
Husk the Fem!
Husk the Fem.
Apostrophe. "And I am called a barbarian," grunted Gringar in a disgusted tone. "Aye, the ways of our civilization are in many ways warped and distorted. But what is your calling?" she queried brustily. "But what is your query?" Those are my
calling.
Best, yeah. Oh, yes. "Gringar of Accordia." "Ah, I've heard vaguely of Accordia. It is the hill country to the far east of the Norgolian Empire. I also heard Agathim curse your land more than once when his troops were routed in the unaccustomed mountains and gorges, saith she." I actually have my eyes out.
Yeah.
"Aye, my poor people are not tarnished by petty luxuries and baubles. They remain fierce and unconquerable in their native climes." After reaching the hidden panel at the head of the stairway, Gringar was at a loss in regard to its operation. His fiercest heaves were as pebbles against burnished armor. Carthena depressed a small symbol included within the elaborate design upon the panel, where open, it slowly slid into a cleft in the wall.
Is that whereupon?
Whereupon.
You laughed. You weren't...
Where open?
Where are we at? Where's where open?
Where open? Here it is.
Where open? Yeah, I think that's supposed to be whereupon.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. That's not what it says.
"How did you come to be the victim of these crazed shaman?" quested Gringar as he escorted Carthena through the piles of rummage on the left side of the trap.
I love piles of rummage.
"By Agathim's orders, I was thrust into a secluded cell to await his passing of sentence. By some means, the priests of Argon acquired a set of keys to the cell. They slew the guard placed over me and abducted me to the chamber in which you chanced to come upon the Skozitic sacrifice. Sacrifice. Their hell-spawned cult demands a sacrifice once every 3 moons upon its full journey through the heavens. They were startled by your unannounced appearance, through the fear that you had been sent by Agathim. The prince would surely have submitted them to the most ghastly of tortures, if he had ever discovered their unfaithfulness to Sargon, his bastard deity. Many of the partakers of the ritual were high nobles and high trustees of the inner palace. Agathim's pitiless wrath would have been unparalleled." "They have no more fear of Agathim now," bellowed Gringar in deep, mirthful tone. I think that's supposed to be tone.
No.
A gleeful smirk upon his face. "I have seen that they were delivered from his vengeance." Engrossed by Carthena's graceful stride, that was me, and conversation, Grignr failed to take note, he failed his perception check, failed to take note of the footfalls rapidly approaching behind them. As he swung aside the arched portal, linking the chamber with the corridors beyond, a maddened, bloodlusting screech reverberated from his eardrums. Seemingly utilizing the speed of thought, Grignr swiveled to face his unknown foe. With gaping eyes and widened jaws, Grignr raised his axe above his surly mien. But he was too late.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
With wobbling knees and swimming head, the priest that had lapsed into an epileptic seizure rose unsteadily to his feet. While enacting his choking fit in writhing agony, the shaman was overlooked by Grignr. The barbarian had mistaken the seizure for the death throes of the acolyte, allowing the priest to avoid his stinging blade. The sight that met the priest's inflamed eyes nearly served to sprawl him upon the floor once more. The sacrificial sat it grim, blood splattered, silence all around him, broken only by the occasional yelps and howls of his maimed and butchered fellows. Above his head rose the hideous idol, its empty socket holding the shaman's enfurbished, infuriated gaze. His eyes turned to a stony glaze with the realization of the pillage and blasphemy. Due to his high susceptibility following the seizure, the priest was transformed into a raving maniac bent solely upon wreaking vengeance. His lips curled and quivering, a crust of foam dripping from them. The acolyte drew a long, wicked-looking jewel-hilted scimitar from his silver girdle. Ooh, a girdle.
Another girdle. And
fled through the aperture in the ceiling, untearing a faintly perceptible ceremonial gibberish. 7.5.
7.5.
I got a short chapter.
Okay. A sweeping scimitar swung towards Grignor's head in a shadowed blur of motion.
Ooh, shadow
With
blur.
axe raised over his head, Grignor prepared to parry the blow, while gaping wide-eyed, one word, in open-mouthed perplexity. Suddenly, a sharp snap resounded behind the frothing shaman. The scimitar, halfway through its fatal sweep, dropped from a quivering, nerveless hand, clattering harmlessly to the Stone Age.
Oh, it does say Stone Age.
Stone Age, I think is what it's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be Stonage.
If that's a word. Cutting his screech short with a bubbling red-mouthed gurgle, the lacerated acolyte staggered under the pressure of the released springboard. Oh, okay.
Le trap!
Now we're going to get 5 paragraphs about a catapult. After a moment of hopeless struggling, the shaman buckled, sprawling face down in a widening pool of blood, good old blood, B-L-O-D,
good old blood,
and entrails, his regal purple robe blending enhancingly with the swirling streams of crimson. Murphic, which is never going to replace Crom's.
No.
Crom. I thought I had killed the last of these dogs, muttered Grignr in a half-apathetic state. Nay, Grignr, you doubtless grew careless while giving vent to your lusts. But let us not tarry any long, lest we overtax the fates. The path leading to freedom will soon be barred. The wretch's cries... Oh my God. Cries is spelled wrong. The wretch's cries must certainly have attracted unwanted attention, the wench mused. By what direction shall we pursue our flight? Up that stair, and down the corridor, a short distance, is the concealed entrance to a tunnel seldom used by others than the prince.
Seldom?
It's seldom spelled right. Others, come on, man. And known to a few others save the palace's royalty. That's a lot of people. It is used mainly by the prince when he wishes to take leave of the palace in secret. Duh. It is not always in the prince's best interest to leave his chateau in public view. Even while under heavy guard, he is often assaulted by hurtling stones and rotting fruits. The commoners have little love for him. Lectured the Nera lady. The near lady? Nera lady?
Near lady.
Near lady.
Nerelady.
It is amazing they would ever have left a pig like him. They would ever have left a pig like him become their ruler. I should imagine that his people would rise up and crucify him like the dog he is. I'm waiting to see who's...
It's not a real word.
Okay. Alas, Grignr. Oh, okay, that was Grignr. Okay. Thank you for letting me know that was Grignor's dialogue. Alas, Grignr, it is not as simple as all that. His soldiers are well paid by him. So long as he keeps their wages up, they will carry out his damned wished. The crude implements of the common folk would never stand up under an onslaught of forged blades and protective armor. They would be going to their own slaughter, stated Cathena to a confused but angered Grigner as they topped the stairway. Yet how could they bear to live under such oppression? I would sooner die beneath the sword than live under such a dog's command, added Grigner, as the pair stalked down the hall in the direction opposite in which Grigner had come.
I'd like to say that Dave's Arnold is terrible.
Oh, it's the idea. But all men are not of the same mold that you are born of. They chose to live as they are, so as to save their filthy necks from the chopping block, returned Cathena in a disgusted tone, as she cast an appeased glance towards the stalwart figure at her side, whose left arm was wound dexterously. Was wound dexterously about her slim waist, his slowly waning torch casting their images in intermingling wisps as it dangled from his left hand. Presently, Cathena came upon the panel, concealed amongst M-O-N-S-T, the other granite slabs, and discernible only by the burned-out cresset above it. As I pushed the cresset aside to push the panel inwards, Cathena motioned to the panel she was referring to, and twisted the cresset, which I get must be a real thing, in a counterclockwise motion. Grigner braced his right shoulder against the walling, concentrating the force of his bulk against it. The slab gradually swung inward with a slight grating sound.
Oh.
Cathena, is it?
A cresset is a metal container of oil, grease, wood, or coal burned as a torch and typically mounted on a pole.
Okay.
The more you know.
Cathena stooped beneath Grigner's corded arms and crawled upon all fours, into the passage beyond. Grigner followed after easing the slab back into place. Winding before the pair was a dark, musty tunnel exhibiting tangled spiderwebs from its ceiling to wall, and an oozy, sickly slime running lazily upon its floor. Hanging from the chipped wall upon Grigner's... The last R is capitalized. Right side was a half-moldered corpse, its gray, flacking arms held in place by rusted iron manacles. Cathena flinched back into Grigner's arms at the sight of the leering set in an ugly, distorted grimace, staring horribly at her from hollow, gaping sockets. This alcove must also be used by Agathim as a torture chamber. It would be nice to figure out who these people are. This alcove must also be used by Agathim as a torture chamber. I wonder how many of his enemies have disappeared into these haunts, never to be heard from again, pondered the hulking brute. Let us flee, before we are also caught within Agathim's ghastly clutches. The exit from this tunnel cannot be very far from here, said Cathena, with a slight sob to her voice as she sagged in Grigner's encompassing embrace. Aye, it would be best to be finished with this corridor as soon as possible. But why do you flee from the sight of death so? Murfit! You have seen much death this day without exhibiting such emotions, exclaimed Grigner as he held her trembling form along the dingy confines. The man hanging from the wall was Doyanada. He had committed the folly of showing affections for me in front of Agathim.
Yeah! There's a gnat flying around me. It's driving me nuts. I killed it. Go on. It's dead.
To be fair, Critical Role has flies in their studio, too.
Bastards.
He never meant any harm by his actions. At this, Cathena broke... I thought it was Cathena.
So did I.
Okay, there's an R now.
Barely.
At this, Cathena broke into a slow, steady whimpering, choking her voice with gasping sobs. There was never anything between us, yet Agathim did this to him. The beast! May the demons of hell's deepest haunts claw away at his wretched flesh for this merciless act, she prayed. I detect that you felt more for this fellow than you wish to let on, but enough of this. We can talk of such matters after we are once more free to do so. With this, Grigner lifted the grieved female to her feet and strode onward down the corridor, supporting the bulk of her weight with his surging left arm. Presently, a dim light was perceptibly filtering into the tunnel, casting a dim reddish hue upon the moldy wall of the passage's grim confines. Carthena had ceased her whimpering and had partially regained her composure. The tunnel's end must be nearing. Rays of sunlight are beginning to seep into. Grigner claimed his right hand. Grigner claimed. Clameed. I think it's supposed to be clamped.
I think so.
His right hand over Carthena's mouth, and with a slight struggle pulled her over to the shadows at the right-hand wall of the path, while at the same time thrusting this torch beneath an overhanging stone to smother its flickering rays. "Be silent! You can hear the footfalls approaching through the tunnel," growled Grigner in a hushed tone.
Terrible.
Look.
I mean, her name's changed once already.
Look, man, I think it's at the level of the book. I think I've risen to the level of the book with my Arnold.
Yes, you have.
All that you hear are the horses corralled at the far end of the tunnel. That is a further sign that we are nearing our goal, she stated.
She stated.
All that you hear is less than I hear. I heard footsteps coming towards us. Silence yourself that we may find out whom we are being brought into contact with. I doubt that any would have thought as yet of searching this passage for us. The advantage of surprise with an actual Z will be upon our side, Grigner warned. Okay, that hurts my throat. Carthena cast her eyes downward and ceased any further pursuit. I'm laughing at you. Towards conversation, an irritating habit in which she had gained an amazing proficiency. Two figures came into the pair's view from around a turn in the tunnel. They were clothed in rich, luxuriant silks and rambling on in conversation while ignorant of their crouching foes waiting in an ambush ahead. "That barbarian dog is cringing beneath the weight of the latch this moment, sire. He shall cause no more disturbance." "Aye, and so it is with any who dare cross the path of Sargon's chosen one," said the second man, spelled with a number. "The peasants are showing signs of growing unrest. They complain that they cannot feed their families by burdened with your taxes." Illinois. I shall teach those sluts the meaning of humility. Wow. This book is big on slut shaming. "Order an immediate increase upon their taxes." It is Illinois. "They dare to question my this is Pritzker. "They dare to question my sovereign authority. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. They shall soon learn what true oppression can be. I will." A shadowed, one word, bulk leapt from behind a jutting promontory as it brought down a double-edged axe with the sped, S-P-P-E-D, of a striking thought. One of the nobles sagged lifeless to the ground, skull split to the teeth.
Oh, poor noble.
Grigner gasped as he observed the bisected face set in its leering death agonies. It was Agafund. I thought he died earlier.
I thought he did too.
I thought he got, stabbed. The dead man's comrade, having recovered from his shock, drew a jewel-encrusted dagger from beneath the folds of his robe and lunged towards the barbarian's back. Grigner spun at the sound from behind and smashed down his crimson axe once more. His antagonist lunged, howling, to a stream of stagnant green water, grasping a spouting stump that had once been a wrist.
I'm waiting for this book to defeat Dave, but it's coming.
Oh, I got 3 more pages. Grigner raised his axe over his head and prepared to finish the incomplete job, but was deterred halfway through his lunge by a frenzied screech from behind. If this is Agathon again. Carthena leapt to the head of the writhing figure, plunging a smoldering torch into the agonized face.
Oh.
The howls increased in their horrid intensity, stifled by the sizzling roasting flesh, then died down until the man was reduced to a blubbering mass of squirming, insensate flesh. Grigner advanced to Carthena's side. The tense is wrong. Wincing slightly from the putrid aroma of charred flesh that rose in a puff of thick white smog throughout the chamber. Carthena reeled slightly, staring dazedly, I think it's supposed to be dazedly, down towards her gruesome handiwork. "I had to do it. It was Agathon. I had to," she exclaimed. "Sargon should be more careful of his right-hand men," added Grigner, a smug grin upon his lips. "But to hell with Sargon for now. The stench is becoming bothersome to me." With that, Grigner grasped Carthena around the waist, leading her around the bend in the cave and into the open. A ball of feral red was rising through the mists of the eastern horizon, dissipating. I think that's spelled
dissipating
wrong.
The slinking shadows.
Yeah, I know, but I think he spelled dissipating wrong. The slinking shadows of the night. A coral. I think it's supposed to be corral. stood before the pair, enclosing 2 grazing mares. Grigner reached into a weighted-down leather pouch dangling at his side and drew forth the scintillant red emerald barrel he had obtained from the bloated idol. Raising it towards the sun, he said, "We shall do well with Barbo, eh? He's Canadian, eh?"
Eh?
Okay, I wish I'd known that earlier. Carthena gaped at the gem, gasping in a terrified manner. "The Eye of Argon! Oh, Kala!" At this, the gem gave off a blinding glow, then dribbled through Grigner's fingers in a slimy red ooze. Grigner stepped back, pushing Carthena behind him. The droplets of slime... Oh no, is this going to be like a thing? We've got 3 pages. The droplets of slime slowly converged into a pulsating jelly-like mass. A single opening transfixed the blob, forming into a leech-like maw.
Forming.
I think it's supposed to be forming.
Are we sure we're not drunk?
No.
Formative.
What is Mitzelflix instead of Crom? Then the hideous transgressor of nature flowed towards Grigner, a trail of greenish slime. I thought it was red, lingering behind it. The single gap puckered repeatedly, emitting a ghastly sucking sound. Grigner spread his legs into a battle stance, steeling his quivering thews for a battle royale with a thing he knew not how to fight. Carthena wound her arms about her protector's neck, mumbling, "Kill it! Kill it!" while her entire body trembled. The thing was almost upon Grigner when he buried his axe into the gristly maw. It passed through the blob and clanged upon the ground. Grigner drew his axe blade back with a film of yellow-green slime clinging to the blade. The thing was seemingly unaffected. Man, we got like 2 pages and they dropped this thing on us. Then it started to sluice up his leg. The hairs upon his nape stood on end from the slimy, misspelled, feel of things.
Slimy.
Bully bulk.
What?
The hairs upon his nape stood on end from the slimy feel of things. Bully bulk. The nauseous sucking sound became louder. I think he got drunk. And Grigner felt the blood being drawn from his body. With each hiss of hideous pucker, the thing increased in size. Grigner shook his foot about madly in an attempt to dislodge the blob, but it clung like a leech, still leeches. Feeding upon his rapidly draining life fluid. I didn't know it was draining his life fluid. I assume that means blood. He grasped with his hands, trying to rip it off, but only found his hands entangled in sticky glue-like substance. Have you really, Grigner? You don't know gelatinous cube protocol? But the slimy thing, he keeps spelling slimy wrong, continued its puckering.
Dave off.
Now having grown to the size of Grigner's leg, that one was on me, from its vampiric feast. Grigner I just want to do the Arnold voice. I might do the rest of it in the Arnold voice. Grigner began to reel and stagger under the blob, his chalk-white face and flattening muscles attesting to the gigantic loss of blood. Carthena slipped Grigner in a death-like faint. Carthena slipped from... Oh, hang on.
Oh my God. Are you okay? You want me to take over? Can we finish it?
No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to do it. Give me a minute. I'm good. Carthena slipped from Grigner in a death-like faint, a marrow-chilling scream upon her red rubish lips. In final desperation, Grigner grasped at the smoldering torch upon the ground and plunged it into the reeking maw of the travesty. A shudder passed through the thing. Grigner felt the blackness closing upon his eyes, but held on with the last ebb of his rapidly waning vitality. I know how he feels. He could feel its grip lessening. What? No. As a hideous gurgling sound erupted from the writhing maw. The jelly-like... The torch killed the thing. The jelly-like mass began to bubble like a vat of boiling tar as quavers passed up and down its entire form. With a sloshing plop...
I think it was supposed to be quivers.
Yeah, I think it probably was supposed to be quavers. You just didn't know how to... The thing fell to the ground, evaporating in a thick scarlet cloud. Oh, now it's red again, until it retained its original size. It remained thus for a moment, as the puckered maw took the shape of a protruding red eyeball, the pupil of which seemed to unravel before it the tail of the tail of creation. How a shapeless mass slithered from the quagmires of the stigmatic pool of time, only to degenerate into a leprosy of avaricious lust. In that fleeting moment, the grim mystery of life was revealed before Grigner's ensnared gaze. The eyeball's glare turned to a sudden plea of mercy, as a plea for the whole of humanity. Then the blob began to quiver with violent convulsions. The eyeball shattered into 1,000 tiny fragments and evaporated in a curling wisp of scarlet mist. Say that 10 times fast. The very ground below the thing began to vibrate and swallow it up with a belch. The thing was gone forever. Hooray. All that remained was a dark red blotch upon the face of the earth, blotching things up as blotches are wont to do.
Blotching me blotchersons?
Shaking his head, his shaggy mane to clear the jumbled fragments of his mind, Gringer tossed the limp female over his shoulder. Mounting one of the disgruntled mares and leading the other, the weary, scarred barbarian trotted slowly off into the horizon to become a tiny pinpoint in a filtered field of swirling blue mists, leaving the nobles, soldiers, and peasants to replace the missing monarch. Long Live the King by Jim Thies.
Dear God. That's the worst thing I've ever read in my life. It's okay. It's okay. Might I also add that Mr. Thies won...
Oh, did you win like a Razzie or something?
Winner of the J.T. Rikosh Award for Excellence. Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, I hope you guys found that funny.
That was episode 400. I hope you listened to it all and were just like, Jesus Christ.
I hope it gave you a chuckle. I hope it made your day a little brighter.
Yes, as I do too. Thank you for being with us for 400 episodes.
Yes.
Here's to maybe 400 more. Or until one of us dies.
Yeah, well, I think if we do that again, we probably...
Could be sooner than later. Hi.
Wow, that's hurtful.
Well, that's not hurtful.
You're going to send me out in a tsunami.
I'm just saying you're old. I did too. Dave drove
almost died on the way here.
Yes, he did. I didn't know it was going to happen. It just happened. The heavens opened up.
Yes, literally.
We'll be back next week, gang, to talk about more stuff. There will not be a video episode next week, but you can listen to us on ToyWorldOrder.com as well as iTunes and Stitcher under Toy World Order. Make sure you check that out. And, gang, thank you. And until next time, David.
Mrift!
You don't have to go home.
But you cannot stay here.
The Toy Bar Peeps is closed. Peace out.
Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper.